Hello, everyone. Welcome to CXO Spice. CXO Spice is a platform where thought leaders share their point of view on innovation and explain how to make it happen in the real world. I'm your host, Helen Yu. Today's topic is AI agent orchestration. Our special guest is Ed Keisling, Chief AI Officer at Progress. Hello, Ed. Welcome to CXO Spice.
Hi, Helen. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you here, Ed. Before we dive into our exciting topic today, let's have you introduce yourself, your role at Progress, and then tell us a little bit more about Progress, what it does, and who it serves.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Ed Keisling. I'm the Chief AI Officer at Progress Software.
I love
We
that title, by the way.
we enable organizations to develop, deploy, manage, AI-powered applications and digital experiences. And we really think about it through the lens in terms of helping organizations sort of manage and take advantage of disruption in the marketplace.
Wow, that's remarkable, Ed. So it's clear that Progress is right at the intersection of AI potential and enterprise reality. I actually came across your article, AI in 2026 on IT Wire recently. You argue that 2026 marks a real break from AI theater. So what is fundamentally different now that technically and organizationally that makes AI becomes infrastructure rather than experimentation?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think in 2025 we were all sort of inundated with all of this hype from YouTubers and a lot of posts on X.com in terms of what was possible with AI, right? And I think that that led to a little bit of disillusionment. And so for me, it's really sort of a case in terms of like holding two truths, which is that they could be overhyping in terms of what is possible, particularly in high scale enterprise environments, but there is also the truth that there is an enormous amount that you can do with AI today, particularly at the individual and team level. And so, to your point, and to your question in terms of what has changed, right? And so, I think particularly in the last 3 months, the models have become significantly better. We can all see this with the voice, video, image generation tools that are available today, but also the ability of the models to sort of follow direction and provide sort of really sort of insightful results. The other thing that I think actually changed is that some of the underlying plumbing and standards have emerged. So we have things like A2A and Model Context Protocol. And the major vendors have also sort of come out with tools to allow us to better manage, monitor, and secure these AI solutions. And so I think all of that is sort of coming together to make 2026 really interesting.
Well, that's a really grounded take, and it speaks to just how high the stakes have become for leadership too, right? So, which brings me to my next question. I work with boards and investors. They're no longer impressed by pilots anymore, right? And from your conversation with executives, what kinds of AI outcomes are they really now demanding evidence for? And where are leaders most at risk of over promising these days?
Yeah, so I think AI demos and AI technology is sort of the ultimate manifestation of sort of the Pareto principle, which is that it's really easy to get 80% of the value with 20% of the effort. But there is just this enormous gap in terms of getting things to be production ready. Uh, but I think for the organizations that have been running these AI pilots, it's really helpful to sort of get your hands dirty and really understand how these tools can scale and where the edges and gaps are. And so in terms of value, where I believe that the value is in the near term is not really through sort of full agentic automation, but really through very purposeful augmentation of people and processes with AI. But for the executives, to your question, right? I think that they want to know that their investments in AI are directly driving either top line or bottom line improvements. And I think the first step for many organizations is just providing access to the tools, whether that's 365 Copilot or ChatGPT or Gemini, and really seeing if any of those tools are driving any changes in terms of outcomes at a personal level. But I think what really most companies are missing is that they're really over rotating in terms of the complexity of the problems that they're trying to solve with AI. And I think maybe this might be tied to some of those demos that I was mentioning earlier. But I think a lot of the organizations that are having the most success really have a clear problem to solve, a clear process that they know how to follow, and most importantly, they have all that data to drive that solution and are approaching it incrementally.
I love the purposeful augmentation framing, right? It keeps human at the center. Now, let's zoom out and look at the architecture that makes this possible. So, you describe orchestration and agentic RAG as the next evolution of enterprise AI. In plain language, how do these approaches change the way work gets done compared to earlier generations of automation or analytics?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of our clients actually had this brilliant quote, which I will reshare, which is, if we only knew what we already know. And I think it really speaks to sort of the data or the gold that all of us can mine within our organizations, and really how critical that is in terms of being a foundational piece to not only accelerate sort of employee effectiveness, but also as the groundwork for these AI agents that are going to be coming. And the challenge is obviously that all of us, I think, have been sort of chasing these sort of dreams of a 360-degree view of our data, but we've been doing it primarily on structured data in the past. And the reality is that we're all sitting on mounds of unstructured data. So we have transcripts, we have video, we have podcasts, we have presentations, we have handwritten notes, right, that really contain the operating framework for our companies. And the way that we sort of look at it is, agentic retrieval, augmented generation, or agentic RAG is a way to unlock this value and to finally be able to sort of retrieve this information in repeatable ways without hallucinations and without having to be an expert in embeddings and data storage and retrieval strategies. And so I think what is different now is that that barrier as to how you can access that type of unstructured data is removed, because previously you would have had to have had familiarity with BI systems or writing SQL, or maybe you had to sort of curry a favor with somebody on the BI team in order to sort of write you a custom report. And now it's really just as simple as sort of asking in plain English what you need.
Mm. Unlocking that institutional knowledge is such a powerful use case, right? But as agents start acting on that data, accountability becomes a real concern. As enterprise move toward agent-driven workflows, how should CXOs think about accountability? Who and what is responsible when decisions are distributed across models, agents, and systems?
Yeah, this is a key question, right? And I think maybe just taking a step back, right? I would say that probably today there are probably a limited number of enterprise organizations that really have these multi-agentic systems in place or and running at scale within their organization. It's not that this isn't possible today, but I think that there is a limited sort of area where we would feel comfortable sort of deploying these, where you could run them in a completely hands-off manner in a mission critical scenario. And so while it's possible to have AI sort of provide those checks and balances on each step, I think that that's a little bit like having the fox watch the hen house, as they say, right?
I love
Uh,
that.
yeah. And so, for us, as you mentioned, we're really focused on ensuring that we have some human in the middle that is validating or auditing the output, and that we really have the right dashboards and metrics in place to enable the end user to monitor the quality, relevance, and groundedness of the results. And so, at Progress, we sort of think it this way, right? Which is that we hold our engineers accountable for every single line of code that AI is generating. And when they issue that commit, that work is a representation and an extension of them. And so when we're building these sort of agentic frameworks, right, organizations need to have the same mindset than when they are building these agents or these capabilities, that you are setting checkpoints, enforcing accountability, and realizing that that output is a reflection of your organization and your approach to AI.
Human in the loop as a design principle, such an important point, right? So I'm really appreciate the example you're giving of how you manage that internally. So let's shift now to how organizations keep all this trustworthy at scale. One theme in your article is building governance and observability from day one. So, what does good enough governance look like at the orchestration layer without slowing innovation to a crawl?
Yeah, so I think organizations of all sizes feel an urgency to act. And so the sort of challenge is sort of finding effective AI governance that is intent based, right? I think it's sort of providing guardrails that ensure reliability and trust and security without sort of stalling momentum or innovation. And so I think it also requires sort of a reevaluation of risk, right? Which also includes potentially the risk of inaction. But I think what we see is that many of the AI initiatives are failing due to infrastructure gaps. So they may have fragmented data, lack of audit trails, maybe zero observability, and it's not necessarily a problem with what the models are capable of today. But again, we sort of think about it without explainability. You have liability and not a product. So in terms of good enough governance, we sort of focus on three pillars. We think about number one, sort of the retrieval and access architecture. So AI needs to be grounded in sort of curated knowledge in a single source of truth. And if you don't have that sort of fundamental building block, everything is going to go astray. And then I think the second thing is that trust. Again, trust needs to be an engineering discipline and a differentiator for your organizations. And so we all know AI is probabilistic. We all know it is prone to decay. And so you really need to establish a mindset that trust is part of that engineering discipline, and that you have the right controls for drift detection, continuous evaluations, to manage that inherent unpredictability of the models. And then we've been talking about this already, right? So human in the loop accountability. So I think it's important that we design orchestration layers where humans can validate results and monitor the quality. And this, I think, helps maintain really, in particular, the enterprise grade accountability without slowing down those high velocity teams.
Those three pillars really resonated with me, Ed. It really does come back to data quality and access, right, to me. And that really connects directly to the operational infrastructure underneath AI. Where do you see organizations struggling most today? Is it trusting the models, trusting the data, or trusting the process that connect everything together?
Yeah, so I think in the past, there might have been distrust with the models themselves, but I think that that is very quickly sort of remediating itself, particularly as the models sort of improve so quickly. But so I think today, really, the key to all of this is really ensuring you have the right data to feed into these models and the right processes to support it.
Treating trust as an engineering discipline is going to resonate with a lot of CXOs to our audience. Now, let's bring it all together, right? Your article hints at an often overlooked reality. AI systems are only as reliable as the data pipelines beneath them. So, why do fundamentals like secure data movement, automation, and managed file transfer suddenly matter more than in an agentic world?
Yeah, so one of the biggest risks I think that we have with agentic solutions today is that they have a potential to sort of amplify the impact of incomplete or dirty data. And so as that type of data sort of moves down these sort of agentic frameworks, you run the risk of sort of the old school telephone game where the outcome is no longer connected to the original intent. And so if that data feeding the AI systems is delayed, it's incomplete or insecure, that entire chain of outcomes becomes compromised. And so in an agent driven enterprise, we really think that every automated decision is only as good as how well you can get all the files that you need, where you need them in one place in a secure, consistent, and well controlled way to provide the proper context for the models. And so this is really where secure file transfer comes into place, which is that if you get that wrong in terms of sort of assimilating that data, even small gaps in your data flows, we're going to turn into operational and compliance failures.
Mhm. That's a very clarifying frame, right? The data pipes are only as strong as the weakest link. So
Right.
for yeah, so for executives modernizing their operational backbone, Whether for AI, resilience, or compliance, what's the first plumbing question they should ask themselves that too often gets ignored?
Yeah, I like to take a step back on this, and so think about, the very first plumbing question I think could be deceptively simple, which is, are we solving the right problem that is going to move the needle for our organization? So how is this AI initiative going to help drive the top line, reduce expenses, accelerate key initiatives, mitigate risks as a result of AI, or maybe help you capitalize on opportunities as a result of AI? And so I think, what we saw in 2025 is that there were too many organizations that were rushing into sort of modernizing pipelines, adopting new frameworks, maybe layering AI on top of systems without clarity on the change that they were trying to drive in their zeal to sort of just show any progress with AI. And so I think this led to a lot of disillusionment and a lack of trust with AI in all of those sort of failed AI projects that we heard a lot about last year.
Solve the right problem first, right? That's profound and applies well beyond AI.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, Ed, I'd love to for you to leave our audience with a final thought.
Yeah, so I would probably say, you can't get reliable AI outcomes without having these sharp problems to solve, and without having the right context to provide to those AI models. And so this really requires reliable data, the data integrations, and the secure data movement to help build that context. And I really think that the organizations that are going to be successful in 2026 and forward are going to be the ones who treat secure governed file flows as part of their core infrastructure, and it's not something that is sort of buried in the background with no real oversight. And so at Progress, we're really leaning into that reality by trying to help organizations centralize, automate, and harden that file-based data flow in their business that people are going to be able to sort of rely on for years to come.
Well, thank you, Ed. I find our conversation rich and practical. Really appreciate that. Here are four key takeaways from our conversation today. Number one, 2026 marks the shift from AI theater to AI infrastructure. The combination of significantly better models, emerging standards like MCP, and improved enterprise tooling has created this foundation for production grade AI beyond impressive demos. My second takeaway is purposeful augmentation beats full automation for now. The highest near term value from AI comes from human amplification. Organizations succeeding with AI have a clear, bounded problem and the right data to solve it. I love the fact that you mentioned about 80% of value with 20% effort, right?
Mhm.
Number three is governance and observability must be designed in from day one. Trust, treat trust as an engineering discipline, implement human in the loop checkpoints, automated drift detection, or verifiable audit trails. I love the example you give about how you hold engineers accountable for their code, even though it's driven by AI. So without that explainability, you have a liability rather than a product. Love that quote from you as well. Lastly, your data plumbing is your AI strategy. Agentic systems are only as reliable as the data pipeline beneath them. So secure, governed, and centrally managed file flows are no longer background infrastructure. They are core to every AI initiative. And at the work you and the team at Progress are doing to bring trusted, governed AI infrastructure to enterprises is what this moment demands. So thank you so much for joining us on CXO Spice today.
Thanks, Helen. It was great to be here.
Yeah, likewise. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Stay hungry, stay bold, and stay grateful.